Grab your seasickness pills, folks, and jump aboard the Big Dipper at Luna Park. And if you have anywhere to leave your stomach, do so now before it leaves you.
The air was thick with the scent of popcorn and salt water, the distant laughter of children mixing with the creak of old carnival rides. Sydney's Luna Park was alive with its usual nighttime magic, but the air, thick with the scent of sugar and treats, masked the creeping dread that coiled beneath Luna Park's laughter. On a cold June night in 1979, the ghost train ride promised harmless thrills and a journey through darkness where skeletons rattled and monsters leapt. But as the ride rumbled forward, the screams that echoed from within were not of delight, but of terror. What happened that night would leave a permanent scar on the park's history, a ghostly imprint that time could never erase. On June 9, 1979, Sue Manning, a 19-year-old youth group director, led her group to Luna Park for what should have been a night of harmless thrills. Among the glowing lights and carnival laughter, she boarded the infamous ghost train, unaware of the horror about to unfold. As her carriage rattled through the dark, she passed an imitation fireplace, just another eerie illusion meant to unsettle riders. But something was wrong. Curious, she reached out, her fingers brushing against something far too real. A wave of warmth pulsed against her skin, unnatural and intense. For a fleeting moment, the thought crossed her mind, why is a fake fire this hot? And then, just as quickly, the ride carried her forward into the shadows. She dismissed the unease. It was a choice that would haunt her forever. Meanwhile, 12-year-old Jason Holman and his best friends, 13-year-olds Richard Carroll, Jonathan Billings, Seamus Rahili, and Michael Johnson had spent weeks pleading for permission. Finally, they secured a night at Luna Park, a secret adventure just for the 5 of them, free of adult supervision. That evening, the park hummed with an electric energy as the boys dashed from one ride to another, their laughter echoing under neon lights while they savored sweet treats and dared each other to embrace every thrill. Then, as the night deepened, they approached the ghost train, a mysterious attraction cloaked in legend, its dark corridors hinting a secret waiting just beyond the shadows. Jenny and John Godson had planned a perfect family day. Hailing from the small central western town of Warren, they brought their 2 young boys, Damien and Craig, to Luna Park, a place meant for wonder and delight. After a joyful visit to the zoo and a satisfying dinner in the city, the family headed to the park for a night of rides, a highlight of the holiday that promised laughter and thrills. By the time the night wound down, they still had 4 ride tickets left. The boys, full of youthful excitement, chose the ghost train. Meanwhile, an unexpected craving for ice cream, something Jenny rarely indulged in, prompted her to tell the boys to wait while she treated herself. But when Jenny reached the ghost train, she was met with a scene that would forever change her life. At first, some passengers noticed flames flickering along the ride's partition like torches, but they dismissed it as a part of the spectacle. But when their carriages passed through a set of doors and emerged on the opposite side, the wall itself was ablaze. As they emerged into a viewing cage, one passenger searched for an escape, only to find they were trapped. In that desperate moment, they all realized they had no choice but to leap from their carts and abandon the dark maze before another set of doors closed in, sealing their fate forever. Even as the escaping passengers pleaded with the ride operator to shut everything down, confusion reigned. The operator simply pressed the button, sending the next carts onward into the unknown. The haunting track, "You'll Shiver and Quake" on the ghost train, played on, eerily unfazed by the mounting chaos. In a moment of frozen terror, Jason Holman watched as the 2 decrepit carriages before him, crammed with the unsuspecting souls of his best friends, Richard, Jonathan, Seamus, and Michael, creaked open their doors, unleashing a bright, eerie light of fire. With a chilling lurch, the ride swallowed his friends whole, leaving behind nothing but the echo of their vanished laughter. Jason sensed something was dreadfully amiss the moment the ride attendant pulled him out of the carriage, just as he neared the ominous threshold known as Hell's Doorway. Jason stood at the viewing cage, eager to wave at his friends as their carriages emerged from the darkness. But when the carriage finally came into view, it was horrifyingly engulfed in flames, billowing thick plumes of smoke, a sight that would forever haunt him. At the same time, Jenny arrived at the ghost train with an ice cream cone in hand. Her eyes alight with excitement at the thought of joining her husband and sons in line, but her joy quickly turned into panic when she realized that neither her husband nor her sons were in sight, and that the ride was now engulfed in a raging inferno. Inside the ride, pure chaos. Passengers scattered in terror, colliding with the walls as towering flames soaring nearly 4 meters high blocked every exit. The confusing maze of the ride offered no clear escape route, and the unbearable heat left everyone gasping for relief. Amid the pandemonium, 17-year-old Anthony Jacob, a Luna Park ghost train attendant, became a beacon of courage. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, he dashed into the burning building, switched on the lights, and led around 15 panic-screaming passengers towards the exit. Risking everything, he returned to guide 2 more to safety. Firefighters raced to the scene, sirens wailing only to be met with a grim obstacle: water supply issues that hampered their desperate efforts to tame the raging inferno. Inside the park, those who had been ushered to safety now stood helplessly at the gates, waiting for any news of those still trapped within. Witnesses recalled the eerie sight of survivors stumbling out of the smoke, dazed and disoriented, their faces and clothes blackened with soot. Behind them, emergency crews fought desperately against the towering flames that consumed the ride. Despite the desperate hope that everyone had made it out, the truth was far more tragic. When the flames were finally extinguished, firefighters discovered the charred remains of 7 victims. Jason Holman's 4 friends, John Godson and his 2 young sons, Craig, just 4 years old, and Damien, 6. The most heartbreaking sight of all was John Godson's final act of love. His body was found wrapped around his boys, a father's last futile attempt to shield them from the relentless fire. As for what caused the blaze, the official answer came shockingly fast. By midnight, the fire extinguished. By 2:30 a.m., 6 bodies had been removed. At 3:40 a.m., a crane arrived. By 5:40, the final victim was recovered, and by 3 p.m., barely 15 hours after the flames were put out, Detective Doug Knight had already declared the cause an electrical fault. But how could a thorough investigation be completed in mere hours? The crime scene should have been preserved, combed for evidence, sealed off to uncover the truth. Instead, it was wiped clean. The smoldering remains of the ghost train was razed to the ground, taking with them any chance of uncovering what really happened. Doug Knight claimed witnesses could prove his conclusion, yet no such statements have ever surfaced. And there's this: if an electrical fire had sparked the blaze, wouldn't the ride have stopped? Instead, the carriages kept moving, rolling onward, engulfed in flames. The internal lights continued to function even as the inferno consumed everything around them. Anthony, the worker who went in to save others, had even switched them on in a desperate bid to save those trapped inside. A fire that should have stalled the ride, yet it didn't. An investigation that should have lasted weeks, yet it was over in mere hours. A crime scene that should have been preserved, yet it was wiped away without a trace. Shockingly, the fuse box, allegedly the source of the devastating fire, stood untouched amidst the ruins. While the ghost train had been reduced to ash and twisted metal, the very component blamed for the blaze remained unscathed. How could an electrical fault ignite an inferno yet leave its own source intact? It was just one of the many unsettling inconsistencies in an investigation that ended far too quickly, leaving behind more questions than answers. Just 2 months later, the coroner's inquest contradicted the initial findings, concluding instead that the fire was likely caused by a discarded cigarette. Still, neither explanations aligned with what eyewitnesses had seen. And although many of those witnesses showed up to the coroner's inquest, none of them were questioned. Despite the clear warnings, Luna Park failed to act. In 1977, the fire brigade urged the installations of sprinkler systems, citing the extreme fire risks posed by the ghost train's wooden tunnels. A fire inspector's report painted a chilling picture. It was a maze. It was timber, all painted black. As a matter of fact, even with the light on, I was bumping into the partitions and the wall. It was a timber ceiling. I would have got lost even with the lights on. The only way I could keep going was to follow the railway track. By 1979, no fire protections had been put in place. Just 4 weeks before the tragedy, park officials were given a final 12-month deadline to comply, but time ran out. After the fire, coroner Kevin Sidney Anderson ruled that while Luna Park had failed in its duty of care, their negligence was not severe enough to warrant criminal charges. The decision left grieving families without justice. In the years following the Luna Park ghost train fire, numerous theories emerged, one of the most persistent being the notorious crime boss, Abe Saffron, ordered the blaze that killed 6 children and a man. Saffron, infamously known as Mr. Sin, was said to have escaped justice with the help of corrupt police and political figures. The lead investigator, Doug Knight, was widely regarded as a fixer, a man who manipulated court cases by altering, suppressing, or deleting evidence and intimidating witnesses. Doug Knight swiftly attributed the fire to an electrical fault, deliberately ignoring or concealing evidence that pointed to arson. It has since been alleged that Knight was being paid off by at least one organized crime figure. Rumors swirled that the fire had been deliberately set at the behest of powerful criminals seeking to force out Luna Park's leaseholders and make way for a lucrative development. And at the center of it was Saffron, the King's Cross gangster who built an empire on illegal gambling, prostitution, liquor, and property. Many believe he had long coveted the prime waterfront land on Sydney Harbor, owned by the state government. However, no police officers have ever publicly confirmed or supported this theory. A 1987 inquiry by the state government's Corporate Affairs Commission found no direct evidence linking Saffron to Luna Park's management. But a year earlier, an investigation led by Detective Inspector Bullock uncovered Saffron's indirect ties to the company that won the Luna Park lease after the fire. Saffron's nephew, Sam Coper, served as the financial controller while simultaneously managing his uncle's trust. His cousins Coleman and Harold Goldstein were shareholders and directors. Meanwhile, Saffron's Arcadia gaming machine company had installed 100 machines at the fun fair. Documents suggest a deliberate effort to obscure the true extent of Saffron's business and family involvement in the company. As for Inspector Doug Knight, he was no stranger to controversy. His history was marred with alarming accusations, some dating back as far as 1954. Allegations against him ranged from assaulting suspects during interrogation to attempting to coerce confessions, but perhaps more concerning was his apparent proximity to the criminal underworld. Just 5 years before the Luna Park fire, Knight found himself at the center of a major inquiry. The Royal Commission into Organized Crime in Clubs heard that he had personally cleared notorious figure Jack Brooklyn of any ties to the American Mafia. Brooklyn, a known associate of crime boss Abe Saffron, would later employ Knight, raising serious questions about their relationship. Whispers of corruption surrounded Knight throughout his career, with claims that he was being paid off by at least one organized criminal. Given these past allegations, his role in swiftly shutting down the Luna Park fire investigation seems all the more suspicious. Did Knight's history of dubious dealings play a role in his determination to classify the fire as an accident? Was he protecting powerful figures with something to gain? And if so, was justice for the 7 lives lost deliberately buried under a web of corruption? A chilling account from the night suggests the fire may have been no accident. Les Dowd, just 17 at the time, was standing near the ghost train when the fire erupted. He swears he overheard a group of teenage males discussing arson mere moments before the blaze began. Witnesses had already reported seeing a group of bearded bikers dressed in leather jackets and knee-high boots riding the ghost train shortly before the fire. In his original police statement, Les described hearing one of the teens say, "I spread the kerosene out, and I lit it with a match." Another responded, "You're a fool for doing it." Then they ran toward the park's exit. Within moments, thick smoke began billowing from the ghost train. For a brief moment, it seemed like a breakthrough. Detectives launched a search for the group of 5 following Les' detailed account. This was around 4:30 a.m., but by noon, before Les and his guardian, Julie Borger, could even catch up on sleep, police took Les back to the station for further questioning. Detective Michael Maher, who had taken Les' original statement, found this development deeply unsettling. In the corridor while Julie stood nearby, officers spoke to Les privately. Suddenly, he felt immense pressure to retract his statement. This time he was led into a small room, with Julie allowed to accompany him. As police pressed him again about what he had witnessed, fear set in. What if something happened to him? What if he was in danger? Overwhelmed, Les took back everything he had said. The search for the group of 5 was immediately called off. The investigation shifted away from arson, and just like that, the truth slipped further into the shadows. It remains one of Les Dowd's deepest regrets. Julie, the refuge manager who accompanied Les Dowd to the police interviews, never wavered in her belief that he was telling the truth. To her, Les was not a liar, a show-off, or an exaggerator. He was a shy kid who had simply tried to do the right thing, only to find himself caught in something much bigger than he had ever imagined. Michael Maher, the detective who had taken Dowd's first statement, later said it would have been, quote, an extraordinary makeup for him to fabricate such detailed account, complete with precise physical descriptions of the suspects. Yet, the moment Les retracted his statements, police wasted no time. Instead of investigating the bikers, they charged him with public mischief, placing him on a $100 bond. Tina Shakeshaft was 14 years old when she watched the inferno consume the ghost train. She had been standing right beside Les near the magic shop when they saw the group of young men. She overheard one of them say, "You shouldn't have done that," or something very similar. Another responded, "Come on, let's split." Like Les, she was called back to the police station to a second interview, but instead of being treated as a witness, she felt like she was being interrogated about her friend's credibility. She refused to change a word. Alan Chappell, a staff superintendent at Luna Park, told police that he had reprimanded a group of youths wearing leather jackets. One of them had been drinking a can of beer. One of those he described, a slim young man with shoulder-length blonde hair, was an almost exact match for the suspect Les had identified. Elena Juhazi, a passenger who barely escaped the fire, also noticed a group of bikies that night. Her husband had seen them too, but she was told by the police to just forget it, and the police didn't add bikies to neither her or her husband's statement. Her husband, Stephen Juhazi, is 100% certain he saw the bikies. Albert Bessel, the ghost train operator, saw every passenger up close as he pushed the buttons to send the carriages in and out. In the early hours of June 10, 1979, at the same time Les and Tina were being interviewed, Albert was also giving a statement to police. He said, "About 10 minutes before the fire was noticed, I saw about 9 men and 2 or 3 girls, who I would describe as bikies, go into the ride." He singled out one man in particular, about 30 years old, with a full brown beard. Later, in separate statements to Luna Park management, Albert mentioned them again. "I was a little worried about the bikies that went in just shortly before the fire, but I couldn't get in to check on them. They went in about 10 minutes before the woman yelled fire." Another park worker, Frank Bottano, also reported seeing a bikie with a very long beard, standing near the train's turnstile. Despite 7 witnesses describing a suspicious group of men that night, some overheard discussing fire, others seen entering the ghost train minutes before the flames erupted, the police dismissed it all. Les Dowd was silenced, Tina Shakeshaft was ignored, key leads were abandoned. And just 9 hours after the last victim's body was carried out of the smoldering wreckage, Detective Inspector Doug Knight closed the case. The ghost train fire was officially ruled an accident. Doug Knight's actions in the days following the fire raised even more troubling questions. 5 days after the blaze, instead of expanding the investigation or following up on witness statements suggesting arson, he asked police to gather evidence that would support the theory that the fire was an accident. This wasn't standard procedure, it was manipulation. So what was Knight trying to hide? His eagerness to push the electrical fault theory, despite glaring inconsistencies, suggests he was just trying to close the case quickly. He was actively steering it away from the possibility of foul play. Could this mean he knew the fire wasn't an accident from the very start? And then there's the question of the bikies. Multiple witnesses saw a group of bearded bikers around the ghost train that night, with at least one witness hearing them discuss setting the ride on fire. Were they just rowdy visitors, or was at least one of them hired to start the fire? If the fire was indeed arson, it's possible that someone, perhaps a powerful figure with an interest in Luna Park's land, used bikers as disposable pawns to carry out the job. Bikers were often used by organized crime for intimidation and dirty work. It's not a stretch to consider that someone like Abe Saffron, who had deep ties to corrupt officials, and a known interest in acquiring the Luna Park site could have paid off at least one biker to set the fire. If so, Knight's role in shutting down the investigation wasn't incompetence, it was complicity. He wasn't just dismissing leads, he was actively ensuring the truth would never come out. Was he pressured, paid off, acting on orders from someone more powerful? One thing is clear, the fire at Luna Park wasn't a tragedy, it was a crime. And the people who could have uncovered the truth made sure no one ever would.